want to talk to nominated Member of Parliament Johnson Sakaja, an immediate former chair of the now defunct TNA.
At least you should let the weekend,
Yeah, no, it's done and dusted.
Then you can see that from next week.
And then we can see that from, well, we've started a new week, so yeah, we're in with that. Okay, so thanks for joining us tonight.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, let's talk about this party. I mean, it's been a great party, I suppose, for all those that were involved. But I think the most fundamental question is, what's different now? What brought this on?
I think, yes, it's been an excellent weekend. And this weekend has been the culmination of months, since last year when we've been planning how to bring our parties together. And it is following a clarion call that at this point, the most important thing for this generation of Kenyans, is how to bring our people more together, how to unite us. And for a long time, politics has divided us. We've seen political parties that are, more or less associated with certain communities. And that was never the dream of the fight for multipartism. The fight that the Manyaras and Muites and all of those guys in the 80s and 90s and the Orengos were involved in to give us political space for expression was not to drive us deeper into tribal cocoons. And we're saying that uniting Kenyans today is the single most important thing that we must do. And so if it takes us to make that political step deliberately, it is not a party of convenience. We don't have to. The Constitution allows people to be in coalitions. We don't have to do that. But we felt that if we're able to do that, then that will be a lasting legacy for this country. That for once we can have a political party based on ideology, based on issues, that somebody in Kainuk in Turkana says that I'm a member of this party in the same way and feels part of it, in the same way as somebody in Kilifi, in Mandera, and in Western. So that is really part of the motivation, a large part of the motivation as to why we felt let's bring these 13 parties together. Parties that have influence in different parts of this country, and so that eventually as it evolves, because it is not just an event, it is a process, and we have to go sell that, and we have to develop, the principles within the party, but so that eventually anyone from wherever they are can have a chance to become a president of this country, and for all communities to feel involved. And that is why our clarion call is Tuko Pamoja,
Johnson, that sounds familiar, though, because we remember the launch of the Jubilee coalition and the alliance between the now president and his deputy. We had pretty much the same clarion call that never again shall a country be divided based on an election. Never again shall we see violence during an election. And it's time to unite the country. And then, in less than 5 years later, we are hearing the same thing. Is this an admission of failure? Because I'll even point out what Majority Leader Duale said in his article in the Standard today. He says the URP was perceived to be a Rift Valley outfit, but yet we heard the same clarion call in 2013. So how sure are we that this will be any different?
You see, one of the things that a leader must always do is to define reality, and we must always be alive to what is real. For example, TNA, the National Alliance, a party that I have been proud to chair for the last 5 years, was a party that was premised on the fact that, look, we need to, create an alliance that is national, push our social democratic principles, and get everybody involved. But as it is, different parties are associated with different parts of this country. So the problem with the coalition is when things get hot, then you retreat to your individual party.
Is that what happened?
I mean,
prior
look at...
because TNA had yourself as chair.
Yeah.
Then you had Onyangolo, who's from, let's put it openly, Luo Nyanza as Secretary General.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to be the whole idea, right? You have this broad base and it's not just associated with Uhuru Kenyatta, who comes from central Kenya.
That is the idea. The reality is that URP has had more MPs from Rift Valley. ODM has more MPs from Nyanza. In Western, we have, I think, 4 or 5 parties. TNA was more prominent in Central. That was actually the reality that came out. And you see what keeps happening is that when issues become hot, you retreat then to your community or to your party cocoon. Look at what happened this weekend in Mombasa. When your best friend is celebrating a birthday, you're expected to be there. Why didn't we see Ford Kenya, leadership there? Why didn't we see Wiper leadership? Because it's always convenient. The road we have chosen to take, Yvonne, is not easy. It's not a convenient road. It is a deliberate decision we've taken to say, let's move away from our comfort zone. Let's stop hiding behind our tribes. Let's stop hiding behind our small parties and come together. When the issues to be dealt with, let's deal with those issues within one house.
Okay, but there also seems to be this notion of moving to different parties. So I'll give you an example. So President Uhuru Kenyatta was in Kanu, moved to TNA less than a year to the election. And then we started to see JAP. There was a lot of support from the president, from yourself as well, fielding candidates in the by-elections in Kajiado, in Kabete with Ferdinand Waititu. In fact, there are people who are in parliament today courtesy of JAP. There was also the Kericho senatorial by-election. It's TNA, and then there's support for JAP, and then now there's Jubilee Party. And, it just almost seems like, where is this ideology if we just keep, seeing the president and his team moving or supporting seemingly different parties all in the span of less than 5 years?
You see, ourselves, and I can speak on behalf of the president, the same ideology and clarion call is what led us to move to, from TNA to Jubilee. JAP was it was the same premise that we want to actually see how we can, test this idea on the ground, and it has so far been successful.
So why not stick with JAP then?
I mean, it's the same party, but we are merging all our parties into that. Actually, Jubilee Alliance Party has only changed its name to Jubilee Party, and all of us have merged into that. So you can't say that the president has moved from KANU to TNA to JAP to Jubilee Party. It's one and the same thing. It was a bridge into this merger party that we have today.
But then that still says something about political party ideology and supporting a lot of these. If the ideology has been the same since then, why then this big announcement of changing the country? If that has been the ideology from the time he was in TNA supporting JAP and then now in the Jubilee Party, what's fundamentally different, I think, is the question that has shifted, in the politics in Kenya. Remember, we've seen this before with NAC in 2002, and there was representation. You saw a lot of people, Moody Awori, Kibaki, Raila Odinga, Charity Ngilu, there was a lot. But what's fundamentally shifted in Kenya's politics as a result of this new party?
A great man, and I'm just remembering his quote, Otto von Bismarck, who was German Chancellor from 1862, said something deeply profound but sounds simple, that a fool learns from his own mistake, but a wise man is able to learn from the mistake of others. And we've been able to look at the history of political parties in this country. If you look at NAC, NAC it was hugely successful, but all of these people came together at the last minute with one sole purpose, to remove KANU. Once they removed KANU, it was a matter of survival. Once they removed KANU, they quickly disintegrated because there was nothing that was, binding them together beyond that.
And what binds Jubilee Party members together?
What binds us?
It also seems like a last-minute thing. We have less than a year to the election.
It would be more convenient for us, to move as a coalition. It is easier. Look at what's happening in the opposition. It's easier. But this is a deliberate effort that we've said, look, what does this country need? What is the legacy and hallmark that we can leave to this country? To say that in the time that Jubilee was in power, we were able to move our politics from politics of individuals, politics of tribal outfits, to one party that brings together all the Kenyans. It is not convenience. In fact, it's actually not convenient. We have a lot of work to do. We have to go around the country. There are people who loved TNA so much. There are people who loved URP so much, and they felt comfortable because there you'd find more of your, of your own people, etc. But tell them, listen, the cause for our generation today, the first generation gave us independence. And if you had the president's speech, he went through that. Gave us independence. And they came together across the country, Tom Mboya to build that Kagia, from Jomo Kenyatta to Jaramogi. And they succeeded because of their unity. The second generation of Kenyans gave us multi-party democracy, if you measure generation in terms of 25 years, And it was the same fight, from Kitogu Manyara to James Orengo, even Raila and all these guys. But they didn't give us democracy for us then to be more tribal.
So what would you say is then the ideology? What is that? maybe trying to put it in terms of a statement or a slogan that people can identify the Jubilee Party with, what would you say that would be?
You see, I'll say two things. One, it is fashionable politically and very easy to say that, oh, this party, Party A is liberal, or this one is conservative, etc. I'll pick up from Tony Blair in his book. He said, where the world has reached in politics today, it is no longer about the red, or rather the black versus the white line of, capitalist versus communist, etc. It is about efficacy. We all know what is needed in this country. We must provide opportunities for all Kenyans. So for us, when we talk about tuko pamoja, what we mean is that for this country to hold together, for every Kenyan, no matter where they're from, to have an equal shot at life, an opportunity, whether you're born in Nanyuki or born in Kisumu, we're saying let us focus our energies on bringing our people together. Of course, beyond that, we have a manifesto that will guide what we do in terms of, the economy, in terms of development, in terms of opportunities for young people, etc. But we're saying the cause for our generation today, apart from the hardware, it is very easy to deal with the hardware. Government has been doing it. This government has done, for example, more roads than any government has ever done in the history of this country in terms of kilometers. But even the railway that was done more than 100 years ago, it took 1 hour to uproot it because of the lack of a fabric that holds this country together. Okay. That is what we want to build on. So of course we have social democratic principles, of looking at the interest of the individual, the interest of community, and providing development across the country, supporting devolution. But beyond that, we feel that it is extremely important, to create unity in this country, that we don't have to look at things through the prism of our different tribes.
All right, and then something curious happens, which is that, in trying to build your ideology, the first party to partner with is the China Communist Party. Now, we know that is the one that drives the political agenda in China, a country that is known to have a very close political system, entirely different from what we ascribe to, in our constitution. It's a monolithic outfit. Take a look at access to information, access to Google. You can't even Google Tiananmen Square in China. And then, the Jubilee Party announces some sort of working arrangement with the China Communist Party. And even we get to hear that, some of the members of the Jubilee Party will be traveling to China on a fact-finding, benchmarking, sort of arrangement, in China before the end of the year. And many say this is so at odds with where Kenya is now, opening ourselves up. In fact, we just got the access to information bill signed into law, but what is this about? Because everybody says this goes contrary to Kenya's constitution, to Kenya's mode of development and politics.
And again, I will say, based on the quote that I gave, that it's only a fool who learns from his own mistakes. A wise man learns from the mistakes of others and from the experience of other people. Jubilee is partnering with many political parties across the world. It's just a great coincidence that actually the delegation from China was around. I think you saw me at the Democratic Convention, talking to leadership of the Democratic Party in the U.S., with the Republican Party in the U.S., with the Conservative Party in the UK and Labour. And for us, being in government doesn't mean that we can take political sides with any political party across the world, But partnership between political parties is something that has always been there. High-level exchanges have existed. All parties in Kenya actually have a certain arrangement
Sakaja,
with the Communist Party.
What could the Jubilee Party in Kenya possibly learn from China's mode of conducting politics in the country?
There's a lot that Kenya can learn from the Communist Party in terms of organization, in terms of the different leagues that they have, whether it is the Youth League, the Women League, in terms of their model of community engagement. You can learn from that. There are things that you choose not to learn from. So it is based on your wisdom that you pick the best from their experience.
Aren't you worried about the association with the China Communist Party? You can, it's all fair to say you will pick what's good and leave what's bad, but just, generally the association. And if you're looking at parties that, in the region or in the world that are very well organized, some would say, well, even go to CCM in Tanzania, for example.
We're also partnering with, we're not even partnering sounds, it gives the impression that is not the reality. We have understanding with these parties. Even in Tanzania, we have CCM, we have ANC in South Africa, we have the NRM. There are things that they do. If the Chinese people have chosen a way to transact, and it'd be very dishonest to say that you will partner with the country China and not partner with the party, because
but surely the economic agenda and the political agenda are,
it is actually the same.
Are different.
The government of China is run by the party. You know, the president is the general secretary of the party and the chairman of the military committee, then the president. The prime minister is the chairman of the party, you know, and so it would be dishonest to say, look, we're partnering with them as government, but not as a political party. And it's not even partnering, it is learning from their experience, learning the best things that they have, and leaving out what cannot apply in this country.
Okay, so what's good, no matter the level, would we learn and what would we leave behind?
No matter the level of partnership that we have with them, there's some things, no matter how much you want to do, you cannot possibly do in this country because of the constitution and
what
because
would you want to do?
Because of what we believe in this country.
That sounds a little scary, Johnson.
Yeah.
Some of the things you would want to do in partnership with China but can't do because of the constitution?
A lot of the things that any political party would want to do is, one, to be organized from top to bottom to the grassroots. Number two, you know, the way the party coexists with the government. You know, in Kenya you cannot do that because
some are
public
a little bit
officers,
worried about that, though.
Because it should not be allowed, and we're saying it in Kenya. Public officers should actually not participate in political activities. That's something we're saying we believe in. So in as much as it is desirable, it has been there in the past in this country. You know, where you have ministers, you have PSs, etc. playing politics. We wouldn't want to do it, and we would not want to do it because
yet,
our constitution doesn't allow.
We do see cabinet secretaries making statements, including Cabinet Secretary for Tourism Najib Balala, you know, even the one for mining, have been making some political statements. Cabinet Secretary for Eugene Wamalwa has expressed his interest in the Nairobi gubernatorial seat. You know, it's at odds with what you're saying here. We're seeing cabinet secretaries making political statements, and yet they're still in office.
They should not.
And so how does that happen?
Our law should not allow them. And the conflict,
the law doesn't allow them.
The conflict that needs to be addressed, really, is the fact that our constitution allows everyone. You know, Article 38 says every Kenyan individual citizen has a right to associate and you know, with a political party.
Yeah.
But the Public Officer Ethics Act is what says then any appointed public officer or state officer should not. You know, and that
so
conflict,
why do we? Yes,
that conflict needs to be resolved.
And I think it's
and they should not be allowed.
But
to do that.
do you think then it's you know, it's not clear, you know, in that respect, because certainly everybody is entitled to a political opinion and to support whichever party, coalition they deserve. After all, it's a secret ballot. But, you know, to make such public statements, you know, supporting one side or another, which is expressly forbidden in our laws, in our constitution, you know, we've
not in
also
the constitution,
yes, in our laws.
Parliament, the constitution allows it.
Yes. So do you see a conflict? Do you think there should be something that bars them? Why are we not seeing, you know, members as yourself, the president himself saying, okay, you know what, Cabinet Secretary Najib Balala, it's fine, but, you know, you're entitled to your own opinions, but you can't make them public as a, you know, appointed officer?
I think, one, there is need for greater clarity in terms of political expression that should be allowed in this country. And there is almost a lacuna in the law in terms of how then that can be expressed. The Public Officer Ethics Act vis-a-vis Article 38 of the Constitution. I know for a fact that the President has actually, you know, told cabinet secretaries to actually desist from playing party politics and playing politics. The whole spirit behind it is that any Kenyan should be able to know that from a public officer you will get unbiased treatment, and they will apply themselves to their jobs unbiased in terms of whether people voted for Jubilee or didn't vote for Jubilee. And the person who has actually led that charge is the President himself. You know, if you look at the emphasis the government has put across the country, it has been in areas where, you know, the government didn't necessarily get...
you know, makes an open statement.
Yeah, but
participating in an election in 2017 and is still in office.
And that is the exact lacuna I'm saying needs to be sorted out, because, you know, every law must have what you call if you don't follow the law, what is the repercussion? What is the what action does the law take? And that does not exist. So and anyone can argue, even if you go to court today, you'll argue on the basis of Article 38. In the hierarchy of laws, the Constitution is superior to an act of Parliament, and that's why I'm saying that needs to be clearly given form and, you know, function
so
and
expression. In the law?
There is a lacuna in the law in terms of that. But for us, what we're saying is this: you know, every Kenyan desires the same thing. You know, to go about their lives peacefully, make something out of themselves, and to have a united country. And that is why we're pushing the Jubilee agenda.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about, you know, a united country and,
yes.
and saying that, you know, we don't want, you know, political parties that are seen to be from one region or another, and, you know, uniting the tribes in the country. But yet,
uniting the people.
Uniting the people,
yeah.
Yes. Okay, but then... some say actions speak louder than words,
yeah.
And that this is a political statement about unifying the country. You recall the capacity assessment and rationalization program that talked about 77% of all public service positions being held by 6 communities, and the rest of the communities being allowed to fight it out for the 23% of the positions that are left. In fact, it went so far as to say Kikuyus have the most jobs, followed by the Luya and the Kalenjin. And some say this is under, the administration. I mean, of course, it's been historical.
Yeah, it can't be one administration.
It can't be one administration for sure. But that we've not seen, a push. In fact, some even fault some of, the appointments that have been made to various parastatals, that the president isn't walking the talk in terms of uniting Kenyans. It's all well and good to say we're uniting Kenyans, but when it comes to appointments, there have been accusations even from the opposition about it being, about 2 communities.
First of all, leave the opposition because they have a worse track record in terms of that aspect when they were in government. And even if you look at the political parties, if you look at ODM, the party leader is from the same community as the chairman and the same community as executive director. Look at Fort Kenya, the party leader, Wetangula. Look at Eseli Simiyu, the secretary general. It runs down. Look at Wiper, so they're not the best people to lecture us about that. I'm the chairman of the committee in Parliament on National Cohesion, and this is something we've really, put our minds to, and we've really thought what would be the best solution, because it's been happening over so many years in this country that you can't go and suddenly fire everybody within government and tell them or do a job application and say that X community needs not apply for this position, because then that becomes reverse discrimination. So we're saying, look, going forward, from the point at which we've taken over as a government, all appointments must be based on the merit of the individual and what they can bring to the table. Yes, it is true from that report, which was done I think in 2013 or 2014.
Last year,
that,
actually. 2014.
2014.
Right,
It was 2014. 1 year into this government. That yes. I don't know what percentage that was, 70-something percent.
Yes.
77% could not have been appointed in 1 year by the Jubilee government.
Right. And what about then the other appointments then, within cabinet?
And also that, if you look at that, you must measure it with the ratio of the Kenyan communities. 10 communities in this country make up 90% of the population. You understand? So you can't expect then that we say, okay, let's divide everything by 43. So you need to have certain interventions that are realistic and also fair, so that you don't do reverse discrimination. You can't say if 90% of this country is from 10 communities, let's give that 90% only 10%.
All right, let me give you another example about a cabinet reshuffle.
Yes.
When Gili was left out, she was replaced by Mailu in the same community. When Maiguru was resigned, taken over by Kiunjuri. Chirchir was replaced by Keter. Kambi was replaced by Kazungu. Kamau as well, Koskei-Bet. And many said this was just an attempt at, meeting that balance. And we understand, and keeping those numbers. But some say, couldn't the president have then decided to, start this afresh and not necessarily replace like for like, not to mention the fact that the president's cabinet still does not meet the 2/3 gender requirement?
Let me say this about the communities. One, this is one of the most diverse cabinets in the history of this country. If you look, since the government of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, there is no one government where you've had only 3 ministers coming from the president's community. 3. Number 2, cabinet has, I think, between 18 to 22 positions. We have 43 communities. It is not also possible to have all the communities there. An ideal situation, really, would be where you have only 1 slot for a community. But then, are we then appointing people based on their community or based on the merit that they bring to the table? The PSS in this government today is the most diverse in the history of this country. The communities that actually, for the first time, have a permanent secretary in this government. Persons with disability, we've seen them there. In terms of gender, the cabinet, or rather the PSs, have surpassed the 30% requirement. In terms of, if you look at cabinet, it is slightly off, I think, by 1 person only, but it's an aspiration within the law that you have then that 2/3 represented in an office. So you look at cabinet in its entirety, including, you look at government in its entirety, not just cabinet. Look at the ministry, look at the PSs, and we've surpassed it. So I think credit is due to this government for having one of the best, most diverse, pick in terms of communities at cabinet level. Of course, it must continuously improve. So the reason why those people are replaced by people from the communities is because of the balance already achieved by the first, cabinet positions.
All right, so let's talk a little bit then, focus as we wind up on, the politics of the Jubilee Party. So, we know the only two officials that we have right now, the president and the deputy.
Yeah.
You were touted as being one of the officials, and then, we're starting to hear that we don't want those who are getting into competitive politics as being part of the party officials. What's your stand on that? What's the way forward, and when do we hope to see new officials?
I think the pressure around who the officials are has largely been driven by the media, because we've been clear from the beginning that one, of course, there'll be retention of a lot of those who've been in different political parties based on the individual party constitutions, and number two, that the process, and the president said it when he addressed the media recently, that the process of coming up with those positions will not include people who are playing politics. So for us, it's not really about who gets what position. I've seen newspaper articles saying that I'm getting a specific position, somebody else is getting a specific position. For me, it doesn't matter. It is about who is the best fit to run this big party.
Are you the best fit to run the party?
I think that is up to the discretion of the membership and the leadership. For now, we know our party leader is a president and the deputy party leader is a deputy president. Of course, there's a transitional clause in the merger agreement that provides the method through which these new officials are going to.
Should those engaging in competitive, politics and elected positions be party officials?
I don't see why not. There's nothing that bars them. It's a political party. It's not a golf club. In this country, we've almost made the word politician a four-letter word. That a politician should not engage.
Do you not see them being, subverting the nomination process? If you were Secretary General today of the Jubilee Party and you were sitting there and you still want to run for Nairobi governor, and there's your friends, would you not sign your own nomination certificate? And
that is the beauty with Jubilee. Because historically, many parties have had shambolic nominations. I'm proud that the party I ran in 2013 had one of the best nominations that have been done based on the number of appeals that came out of it. But
at the time,
the biggest challenge.
You were not running in elective politics, so
the point that I'm making is this: the beauty with Jubilee is that we have said that no matter who the chairman is and the secretary general, I'm running for governor of Nairobi, and if I have a position in the party, my opponents would naturally be scared. If I was conducting the nominations, we're inviting the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to actually take charge of the nomination process.
Yes, but then there is a point at which you would sign the nomination certificates and ratify.
No, they will be running the election. In fact, we actually want to bring amendments to Parliament so that the decision by the IBC becomes a final decision. So you can't win the nomination and then somebody else signs a certificate. And that has been the problem with most political parties. And not to telling people in Jubilee.
And you wouldn't interfere with the process?
We shouldn't, because we use the infrastructure and we want them to independently run it. So no matter who you are,
an interested party.
That is why we're giving them that role, because that has been the conflict. So if the IBC is conducting the nomination, even my own nomination, I'm an aspirant as well. Even if I'm a leader of the party, I'll have to go to the people, because it does not benefit a party to give the wrong candidate a certificate who doesn't have the will of the people for him only to go and lose.
Right.
And we've seen
Depends
that a lot.
Depends on what the wrong candidate or right candidate
is. The candidate who loses, if a candidate loses the nomination, and we've seen it in many parties, where the wrong person gets a certificate in terms of not the person who won, then the person who actually has the people.
With Memusi Kanchori.
That is out there. You can't say whether he won or not, because you could have won the election, and there are other factors. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay.
There are other factors that come into play.
Here's a quick one. Just because the music is telling us we need to go. So has the politics changed in this country as a result of this great Jubilee merger? For example, will Jubilee Party be able to field a candidate in Bondo, for instance, and win?
Yes. When we launched TNA, we fielded a candidate in Diwa, 3 months after our launch. We field candidates everywhere. And the change in our politics is not an event. It will happen in a day. It's a journey that we must take. Right. And I think it's a journey that we even urge the opposition to actually start taking. Kenya needs fewer political parties that are based on ideology. If you're a member of ODM, whether you're from whichever part of the country, you must be known to stand for something specific.
Okay, thank you very much. Johnson Sakaja, nominated Member of Parliament. We shall wait to see whether he will take up any position in the Jubilee Party. Like you said, maybe the pressure is from the media and from the people.
Jubilee is not about individuals, it's not about me. Let's wait and see.
Okay, all right, we shall wait and see. Thank you very much for your time on Checkpoint.
Always a pleasure.
Tonight. Your feedback, we'll be getting to that in just a moment. The hashtag is Checkpoint. Keep it coming. Did he satisfy your answers? Well, we'll still be talking a little bit more about this, lest we forget my take, so you don't want to miss that later on the show. Stay with us. You're watching Checkpoint here on KTN.